So the title of that song, obviously, is The Hardest Part of Love is the Letting Go. Last Father's Day, when we hit Father's Day, it was a very, very difficult day. It was our first Father's Day without Nora, and so we chose not to be here. I chose not to be here. I chose to take the time for myself. And as this Father's Day approached, I had that option again. I could, stay home, maybe go to the beach. But I realized that there was so much I did want to say, especially using that song. The hardest part of love is the letting go. And what letting go really means. Letting go doesn't mean saying goodbye. Letting go means letting go is what Jamie and I were talking about, of all of your preconceived ideas about what your children are supposed to grow up and be. Really being willing and able to let go of that. And that is the hardest part of parenthood, right? Wouldn't you say, Tiffany? Letting go of what you imagine for your children and that you know better and you know how to make it so that it's easier for them. I don't want you to have to go through what I went through. I don't want you to experience all the pain I experienced. We want to do that, and yet we really can't. So the hardest part of love is the letting go. The hardest part of parenthood is letting go of that. So I want to talk a little bit about Father's Day. Father's Day came to be in 1910 in Spokane, Washington, started by a woman named Sonora Smart Dodd in honor of her father, obviously. So it was 1910, and her father, William Jackson Smart, who was a single parent who raised 14 children. Wouldn't you put a Father's Day in his honor? I would. So in 1910, she went and she asked if her church, if they could consider celebrating Father's Day since they already celebrated Mother's Day in honor of her father. So they did, but it didn't catch on and it didn't become a national holiday. But this woman, Sonora, she petitioned every single year of her life from the time she was 28 all the way through till the time she was 90 when it passed. Because in 1972, President Richard Nixon signed a congressional resolution, one of the good things he did, signed a congressional resolution declaring the third Sunday in June as National Father's Day. So just think about that. She's 16 and she asks, can we have Father's Day? Can we celebrate that? And there's a yeah, and it's nice. And then when she gets to be a little older, has her own children, her father has passed, she's like, I want to petition this to be a national holiday. And she does, and no. How many no's must she have heard between the time she started and when she turned 90 years old? That's from 28 to 90. That's 62 years of no's. And yet, it's Father's Day today. We're celebrating Father's Day. You know why? Because it was inevitable. And that's the title of my talk today. The inevitable. So, when I talk about the inevitable, what I mean is, and the dictionary says, certain to happen. So, according to Sonora Smart Dodd, she proved Ernest Holmes' philosophy of life. She was absolutely certain that Father's Day needed to be a real thing. And so, it may have taken her 62 years, but she got her yes because it was inevitable. Where was it inevitable? And what does that mean, this idea of inevitability? It was inevitable in her mind. She never stopped. She never let no stop her. She never let anything stop her. She just kept going because for her, it was inevitable. There would be a Father's Day. Ernest Holmes said this, never deviate from the field of mental certainty. Never deviate from the field of mental certainty. So there's my first question for you today. How often do you deviate from your field of mental certainty? How many times do you allow no to take away just that much more of your energy? How many times do you allow something when it doesn't work out right away, do you give up and say, well, I guess it's not meant to be? No, you didn't mean it to be. Because Sonoma, Sonora. Sonora. Oh, Sonora. That didn't even hit me till now. Oh. So Nora created Father's Day. That's so beautiful. Well, love that I find these things out when I'm right in the middle of talking. So, Sonora, no, I can't get it out of my head, would not allow a no to stop her. How often do you allow a no to stop you? Ernest Holmes, never deviate from the field of mental certainty. So what is the field of mental certainty? What is the field of mental certainty? So my next question to you today is this. What are you certain of? I'm certain that the third Sunday in every month, every June is going to be Father's Day. That's a certainty. Bless you. That's a certainty, right? What are you certain of? Are you certain when you go to bed at night, you're going to wake up the next morning? I think we're all pretty certain of that, most of us. So what are you certain of? So if Ernest Holmes says there's this field of, what are you certain of, Will, about your life? Are you waiting and hoping? And that's just not to you, it's to all of us. Are we certain about our life? Or are we waiting to see what it will become? Are we certain that our lives are going to unfold perfectly? Or are we going to wait till it unfolds perfectly and then be certain about it? That's this field of certainty that Ernest Holmes is talking about. So this field of uncertainty, we're in the middle of this pandemic right now, and I can tell you, it is creating, I don't have to tell you, you can tell me, it's creating such havoc. It is wreaking so much crap from so many people, and everybody's getting involved in it. Where's the certainty that what we're going through here is a beautiful evolution that takes us to the next level of our highest living? Where's that certainty? Because that certainty seems to be a little lost at the moment, but we have to have it. Because if we're going to just go out here into the relative world and live in the relative world and then find all of our truth out here, boy, we have a very tough life ahead of ourselves. But, as Ernest Holmes says, if we never leave the field of mental certainty, then I'm leading my own life. I'm directing my own life. He also said this, move forward, thinking only about what you want. Be certain. Move forward, thinking only about what you want, and be certain. So I would suggest that all of us start really entering this field of mental certainty and stop worrying or thinking that there might be something ahead that I don't want, or that what I want may not happen. He says, move forward thinking only what you want. Now, that doesn't mean we're going to go around outlining our whole life. Well, I want this to happen at this time with this thing. No, I'm talking about a bigger picture. I'm talking about the certainty that my life is going to work, a certainty that my life is going to be good, it's going to be healthy, it's going to be successful. I'm going to be able to create the things I want to create in life. I'm going to find the perfect partner for those still looking. You know, everything that I require for my life to be its highest and best, I am certain is available to me. I just had a conversation with somebody recently who said they weren't sure that there really was anybody for them. And I'm like, really? In this entire universe, there's nobody for you. And it was a lady of a certain age. And I said, there are people all the way through to 110 who are probably still looking. I said, there's nothing off the table. Everything has to be on the table. But are you certain of it? That's the question. So there's a lyric in this song. Usually, the last talk I gave on this song, with this song, was about the hardest part of love is the letting go. But there's a lyric in this song, your children start to leave you on the day that they are born. And I remember when I first heard that song, it really grabbed me, that your children start to leave you on the day that they were born. And you know, as a father, and as a mother, but we'll stick with Father's Day today, as a father, it's inevitable, isn't it? It is absolutely inevitable that our children are going to grow up. We'd like to think it's inevitable they will eventually leave home, but it is inevitable that they will grow up. Some children end up staying at home forever. I know that's not happening with you, right? Is that a yes? Good. So the inevitability of our children growing up is very, very, very important for us. It was not inevitable to me that I would proceed, that one of my children would precede me, would move into this, whatever this next world is, and leave me here. That was not inevitable. In fact, it was never on my radar. And yet, because it happened, and because Nora is no longer with us, and because Will is with us, there is inevitability to what that does in our lives. Now, the real question is, does inevitability come from someplace else, or does it come from within me? Is there an inevitability? Is there a certainty that basically already exists? Well, the answer to that is yes. There is a certainty that already exists. Life will continue to move forward. We are nothing more than energy. And I want to read this to you about epigenetics. So if we are energy, and it's all we are is energy, then we are always going to evolve. Just as our children are always going to grow up, so are we going to grow up at all times. You and I, all of us, we are always going to grow up. We're always going to be evolving. In epigenetics, it says that there is a DNA within me that is my father's. And my father's has the DNA of his father before him. And there's this DNA that we track. William has my DNA in him as well, because I have my fathers and sons and daughters and children and mothers, all of us. The DNA just constantly keeps going. That doesn't change. So what changes it? Epigenetics comes along and says, your DNA doesn't change, but your experiential changes. Not the DNA. It changes your experience of it. Your certainty deals with your health. Your certainty deals with your finances. Your certainty deals with your love affairs. Your certainty deals with your creative expression. Ernest Holmes says, never deviate from the field of mental certainty. So the question becomes, what's important for me to remember on this Father's Day in terms of the inevitability of my life? I asked Jamie about his father because I knew I wanted to talk about mine. My father was a very, here's the thing. My father was a very talented man. He was a beautiful singer, but he could never use his singing. He became a police officer. All of my brothers were police officers at one point. Some still are. And my father passed along a lot of things. But when my father died, he died of a very specific type of cancer that is inherited. And so all of his sons, there were 4 of us, were brought into a room and told, you have this, and you have to be careful of this. And it was an interesting moment because I thought, well, there's something to inherit from your father, this gene. And at the end of the day, when you look at something like epigenetics, and when you look at something like certainty, as Ernest Holmes says, the question becomes, what am I going to know about that? And does the knowing, our theme this month, change it? No, it doesn't. Whatever is in me, in my DNA, is here. Done, end of sentence. You don't change your DNA. What you do change, though, is whether the DNA gets activated or not. What it does in your body. And the mind is what that's all about. Now here, it also goes in another direction. My father also had traits about himself that perhaps I did not want to bring, as Jamie said, into my own parenting. My father taught me some things about parenting that I learned not to do it a different way. But when I look back at his father did it the way my father did it. So it was up to me to change that particular hereditary line and say, no, we're not going to do it this way. Yet in Kevin's case, Kevin's father, probably one of the most integritous men I've ever met on the planet, a family man who cared so much about his family, so much about his son. He flew. Did they fly or drive to Southampton? They drove. Drove all the way from Rochester, New York to Southampton, New York, to be at a sunrise wedding of his son in 1990. 1991, thank you. When it just wasn't thought of. Why? My father didn't come. My father was kind of, well, as he said it's just too hard to deal with and it's too embarrassing to deal with, to go to a wedding of 2 guys. But Kevin's father, and I want to be honest, I want to be very clear. I'm not saying my dad was wrong because my dad did what he needed to do for him and Kevin's father needed to do what he needed to do for him. But when we're looking at traits, you get to decide which trait you live. You are not stuck with any traits. You're not stuck with any disease. You're not stuck with any DNA. You may be stuck with it in your body, but you're not stuck with living the results of it. It's up to you. It's up to your mind. So, it is inevitable that you will grow up. Unlimited potential. Ernest Holmes said, never deviate from the field of mental creativity. Growing up into unlimited potential, constantly growing. So there's this thing, nature and nurture, right? Nature says, I'm predisposed to this. Nurture says, not going to happen because I know who I am. That's what these are about. Full of love, gone with anything I need to forgive, and I know who I am. That trumps everything, and I used the word on purpose. That trumps everything. It is up to us, each one of us, to know what we know, to stay clear on what we know, and to choose those things that operate at the highest level of good for ourselves. That's what Ernest Holmes is talking about. So, where does that leave us, the whole epigenetics thing, with this whole Father's Day? Well, when I woke up this morning, I thought about you, Tiffany, that, this would be, I think, your second Father's Day without your father. And I thought about the emotions that people have on this type of a day. I woke up and at 6 a.m. got a text from my brother, who I haven't spoken to probably in 4 years. Not because I haven't spoken to him. We just don't talk. We never had a relationship. He's a few years older than me, and we've just never had any kind of real relationship. And I'm sitting in the office working on this talk, and a text comes up, and there's my brother, my oldest brother, saying, Happy Father's Day. I hope you have a beautiful day. And I was like, wow. So I wrote him back. Now, I don't share my feelings very often with my siblings because it's just not who we have turned into over these years. But I wrote him back honestly, and I said, it's a very difficult day for me. This day always is bittersweet. I have an amazing son that I get to celebrate today, and I have an amazing daughter that I get to grieve today. And that's my Father's Day. I get to do both. And I'm not going to not do both. I'm not going to pretend that it's not what it is today. And I wrote him back and told him all that. And then he wrote back to me, we probably talked more today than we've spoken in the last 20 years. Why? Because there's something going on in our world right now. And it is that father energy. It is that energetic flow of realizing who we are, where we are, and what time we're in. We talk about our forefathers, what they brought forth. And we look at the world right now, the riots, the burning, the pandemic, the political craziness that's going on. And I look back and I think of the forefathers and I think, they had it pretty rough too. And there was the Civil War wasn't an easy time. And everything that's gone on in this country. So for me, this Father's Day is not just about being a father. It's not just about my father. It's about the forefathers and the fathering energy of this planet right now. And here's the thing, everybody. If we get off the hamster wheel and we stop investing our opinions and, as Jamie said, our judgments, and we actually come from love only, then we are going to allow ourselves to do what Ernest Holmes says, to stay in that constant field of certainty, that constant energetic field of certainty, knowing that we are moving to the highest and best place we could ever have possibly been at this moment in our history. It is time for us to let go of all of the cancers, all of the anger, all of the prejudice, all of the racism, all of the sexism, all of the homophobia, all of the stuff that keeps telling us that we are separate, and honor the fact that, like it or not, we all have the same DNA because we all come from the same Father, Mother, God, whatever you want to call it. We are all that beautiful energy. However, epigenetics tells us that even though we are all the one thing, you can use it any way you want. So my challenge for you today on this Father's Day is to find the most amazing qualities about your Father. Find the most amazing qualities about God that you have ever thought. And then realize those are your qualities. And you get to live those qualities at whatever level you decide to live them at. So, at the end of the day, the hardest part of love is the letting go. It's the letting go of all the old ideas, the old energy that no longer serves us. And the idea that at some point we're all going to have to grow up and leave that comfortable place we have all created for ourselves and step into something so much bigger, so much fuller, so much more loving, more successful, more creative, that will just seem like, well, like our forefathers. Because it's time for us to rise above all of it and stand in the inevitable life that is ours to live. Namaste.